still think that the use of Smalltalk and the adoption of Smalltalk by ourselves do not constrain our targets, and we can face development of systems using Smalltalk at any place, no matter about the hosting environment. So what we are doing with people in Argentina is we are growing a group of people that has the attitude to take the responsibility to run their environments everywhere, and do not think that we are constrained by a VM or some technology that we can't put our hands on it. Okay? So we are promoting a change in attitude in Smalltalkers to put their hands in the VM, but not consider the VM as something as a black box. We want Smalltalkers to share experience with people that have already experience in VMs and can work with us to make run our objects anywhere. So it is a formulation of doing yourself Smalltalk everywhere, and it do not mean that it can be used in companies or in organizations that are defined by business. People and Smalltalkers move easily from one organization to the other, so there is a spreading of attitudes, and we want to promote the attitude of doing your objects run everywhere. And do not wait to a VM provider to provide you the platform to run your objects. You can take your hands on it and help with others to make your objects run. Well, I have been involved in designing different formulation of a modern Smalltalk, and Smalltalk that can promote the use of the platform. And I have invested some years in partnership with VM developers and trying the way to use the experience of a small number of people to make another Smalltalk VM. And it is not a good idea, because there is a few, there is not enough people with real experience in VM to make a different VM today and make business with that. It is something that we all need, but the experience required to write a VM is high in cost. And it is real that Smalltalk communities have not generated users of VM communities. There is a few people doing VM work today to make it an option to write another Smalltalk VM. And there is, of course, some licenses problems with that, like a fingerprint of bytecode sets, that it is something that has it is conditioning about what kind of bytecodes you can use in a new VM, and other topics that has issues with licenses. So one problem I have identified with the years is the problem of the VM concept. We as Smalltalkers assume that we need a VM to run our objects. Historically, it was true, real, that we need a VM to be put a level of abstraction with the real machine. But today, technology has changed, and we have the semantics required to run Smalltalk specified as part of other languages that use delegation. And JavaScript is an example of that. Most of the semantics of Smalltalk can be expressed in JavaScript, and use JavaScript as an assembly language of Smalltalk. Smalltalk as a language is too low level. It is like machine language level. If you see each instruction in a method is very low level, and what makes Smalltalk important is the class hierarchy and all the architecture Smalltalk has, but as a language, Smalltalk is like assembly language. So we can see there a relationship with the definition of JavaScript, and we can use JavaScript as assembly language. Another important thing is that the VM concept was important for the times of customer provider relationships and business. But today, in an open world that people can do it by themselves, the relationship to wait a provider for a new VM in a new target is too long to wait. And it is important that we Smalltalkers can have alternatives and build our alternatives instead of waiting for a provider of our VM. Oops, sorry. Well, I started to study the different implementation of JavaScript, and I have found that V8 VM, the Google's VM, from the start have a lot of similarities with a high performance Smalltalk VM. One of the similarities is the generational garbage collector and the garbage collection architecture. Another important thing about V8 VM is that it is not constrained to a bytecode set. Each instruction at a VM level is structured in the JavaScript language. So they do not use bytecodes. And it is important for licenses. We are clean with bytecode fingerprints. And it is the same to generate a bytecode array than to generate source code. It is the same for the VM. So if we generate JavaScript code, we are generating the same as generating bytecodes. And it is readable. And it is really a good choice to do not have bytecodes. And all the optimization is done inside the VM, and we are clean of that at that level, at our lowest level as Smalltalker. And if we want or need to implement something different or extend the VM, of course it is an open source VM, so we can do that change at the VM level. And I have made a lot of that in the past, changing V8 VM. I started that way. I started modifying V8 VM for my needs and the needs of my customers to run another semantics, Smalltalk semantics. I started that way. And in a moment I realized that it can be open source, and I clean all my private stuff from there and showing the source with one of the major important developments in the same area that was STIC. STIC, some script talk, and now it is called Amber, but it is not the same. It is it has changed a lot from STIC to Amber in a different direction that I needed, but it was my particular needs. Okay, so I maintain the idea that to make open source, it should be the same in the core, clean my private stuff from there, and provide a platform that is open source. Something important about the VM, I call that the invisible VM. V8 is the invisible VM for Smalltalkers, but invisible for Smalltalkers. There was no one at that time thinking that V8 can be a Smalltalk VM. But if you see V8 internally, you will find that V8 is using Strongtalk's framework for code generation. So it is evidence that has run Smalltalk in the past. Of course, the framework has been enhanced. It is supporting a lot of more platform and generating more efficient code. But it has run Smalltalk in the past. So the generator, native code generator, was written for Smalltalk, worked for Smalltalk, and now it is working for V8. But it means that we can generate code, efficient code from Smalltalk and run in the same VM. I have talked about garbage collector. Another important thing about V8 is that they are inferring from runtime the generation of classes. Internally, the VM generates classes based on hotspots. So there is a layer inside the VM that infer a set of classes and optimize at that level. And it is a kind of enhancement during runtime that is not implemented in other Smalltalk VM. So I saw enhancement of the runtime environment in V8 that I have not seen in Smalltalk VMs yet. Another important thing, the group, international group of V8 VM users is more than 1,000 people. And they are modifying the VM and make questions about that. So there is a big community changing the VM. So it is something normal for them. And if we need any custom change on the VM, we have a great user base there that is not related with Smalltalk. We can apport that experience. Okay? Well, S8 started as a private project more than 2 years ago and running on top of VM. But today, I made, not today, 1.5 years before we published the first version of S8 mid-based, and what is under mid license is the image, not the Smalltalk sources. The Smalltalk sources can have, of course, mid license, but can be any license. Okay, but the code we generate is mid-based. So if you save an image using S8, because we can use image or not, we can assembly the system on demand using modules, or we can start from an image. Okay, it is different ways that we can work today, and we can generate images, images with only code, or images with globals inside. So that image is JavaScript code it is a string. Yeah.
So you can build an image on for this VM from the ground up. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So you can do it from just, you don't have to start with an image. You can start with the
We can start with loading minimal modules, and the image or the idea of the image grows from there. And at a point you can make a snapshot, and it is an image.
Yeah.
And you can load the image in a web page or anywhere in an Android device. So the image for us is a string, because it is code.
Okay.
And we generate that code and can transfer the string to another computer and start there. So we can spread the image or modules depending on what we need and what the system needs. Okay? What we need to run today, S8, is an ECMAScript 5 implementation of JavaScript. It means that it runs on V8 on any modern JavaScript engine. So we can run in Internet Explorer, we can run in games engines that use JavaScript for scripting, and we can write Smalltalk for games. That way, there is a lot of applications. We only need a JavaScript interpreter there, and not interpreter as something that is old-fashioned interpreter. A high-performance interpreter is what I'm saying. So I told you we make it meet, the image is meet, and it is not enough. It is not enough to provide the sources. We consider that it is important to have a worldwide repository of frameworks, because Smalltalk has to do with frameworks and not with low-level virtual machines. I'm speaking about virtual machine and how to run now, but it is not the important thing. The important thing is it runs, but it is the start point of our work. S8 is the platform to run, and it is granted that it runs, but it is the starting point of a normal work with Smalltalk. It means work at the framework level, at the integration level, and how to use different libraries. And I want to carry, because I want to show you how to do that at this day today. But important thing is that we make a site to sharing with a model of contributions. A contribution is a system that is shared to learn how to do something in a platform, in a specific platform. That can be web-based, Android device, or any place. So a user of a service publish contributions and do or is involved in social development using Smalltalk. Social development means that if you need someone to work with for a time, you can reach in the platform, in the UI8 service, and share the work, okay, and do it globally. I want better. Yeah, no, not yet. I will not go on. But the presentation I'm doing today is published as a contribution. So all that you are seeing here running a browser. I'm not using PowerPoint. I'm using Chrome, and you can point to this link and see the presentation while we are doing and seeing it now. Well, in this site you will find a lot of projects and experiences made by people, and each contribution helps to understand how to run S8 in different platforms. See? So, at this address, you will find the contribution repository and our framework central. The framework central is organized in folders, and each framework is published there as Smalltalk code, as JavaScript code. It means binary code for us. And any system can bind and download the frameworks directly from the service. So if you build your system dynamically, you bind to different addresses and download the modules from there. And it is important to maintain your system updated because dynamically the system downloads code that is maintained for different people. This is one way of doing things. If you need to download the framework and put it in your server, you can do that. So it is a global repository, nothing more than that. Another important thing is to have publications about experiences using S8. We have a newsletter. It is currently at volume number 2. And in this newsletter, you will see reports of use of S8 for different systems. S8 is currently used for system to do optimal collecting of resources that are maintaining for using geographical information, that kind of systems. We are using also to do promotions in the Argentinian coast. I have made a system that do face detection, crop of the image, and compose the image for postcards in the Argentinian coast, and all the processing, detection of faces, and mixing of images is done entirely in S8. So we can write systems that have high performance. We can use high performance libraries written for JavaScript. We can use any plugin in the web or outside. We have all the tools, and we do not pay any performance costs because we are using Smalltalk. With S8, it is important that the S8 implementation, you have the power and the speed of JavaScript. We have made a lot of effort to do not put nothing in the middle each time you send a message, for example. We generate JavaScript code, the most efficient JavaScript code we can generate today, and we will be working more on that. But the idea is that we do not pay for our adoption of Smalltalk. We must generate something that runs faster and anymore. We have a wiki. Also, I make sessions to work together, and we have made that from 1.5 years ago up to date, with a frequency of 2 per month, something like that. Well, how to run S8? You need an agent to execute a JavaScript VM. So it can be a browser, it can be a custom-made version of V8 VM. I will show you in a few minutes how to do that. The agent have the possibility to publish plugins at this level, and it will be seen from JavaScript side, so from S8 side. We are using a small boot that basically defines a global that is Smalltalk, defines nil, and a few services like constructing a new class and binding a function with a message for a class. So it is a minimal file to below, and on top of that we can load one of our images, that it is a JavaScript file, okay? And our frameworks do the loading using these services, and after this image is loaded, the image at the bottom of the code has a launch message to be propagated to all the classes. So has a startup mechanism for an application to boot. Okay? So an image is the same concept as an application, and can be the startup of the application. And a lot of modules can be loaded on demand by the application from the web or for different resources or sites. In case you are developing on Android, the modules can be embedded in the native application. So you can load from there and do not need to go to the web to download the module. But if you want to go to the web, we have startups for all the platforms, so you can download the startup application, and there is the minimal implementation to download and assembly your application and start learning from that. I will try to go fast in the parts that will be easily known for you, but at the object level you will not find something mystical or something different from a Smalltalk. What is interesting for me to say here at the object level is that we manage action sequence and events. Actions are important to as a model of execution of units. So all the mechanism for linking one component to the other and make a relationship from one object to the other, and when an event is triggered, it is activated an action sequence that go for evaluating another object is mounted at the object level. So we have composable actions at the object level. Of course, you will find the change update mechanism, the events, when sent to, when an event do an action, all implemented. Perform and basic cut is also complete, and evaluation and deferred evaluation of actions. So you can evaluate an action or say, well, evaluate this action 1 minute deferred in time, or periodically at that times. That kind of evaluation is what we are doing and can be done with blocks. The transform to JSON is defined at object level and can be refined by any subclass, but it is implemented at object level. behavior class and meta class also, you will not find anything strange there. But what I want to mention that S8 was the first platform that implemented completely what is class side, instance variables, class globals, pool dictionaries. It is a complete Smalltalk implementation at this level. And it is easy to see and how it is implemented. About blocks and compile methods, it is the same of functions in JavaScript. And I want to mention that JavaScript and JavaScript 6, they are defining a protocol for callable at object level, at JavaScript object level. It means that any object can be called as a function. And it is something important for us too, because it is something that, at least for me, that I wanted all the time for Smalltalk, that any object can be a compiled method and put it anywhere and act as a compiled method. It is a simple model of evaluation and can be served by any object. So in JavaScript, we are seeing that they are defining that kind of stuff, and we can use that if we say that we need JavaScript 6. But currently in S8, we lower the dependency, okay? But it is only using what is specified by JavaScript standards. At this level, you will be surprised that we do not have multiple types of numbers. And we have only one class, and it is number. So for numbers, we have a simple model, and it is directly going to the VM, so it has high performance. Our compiler is maintaining some, doing some inference of what can be a number and generate code to go faster in case of numbers. So it is not needed to write custom code in JavaScript if you know what we are doing at Smalltalk level. Okay. Something important to mention is that strings are read-only. And in Smalltalk, we always saw that a string is something that we can create with new and put it there all the times, the contents, after creation of the object. In JavaScript, strings are read-only, and it makes performance impact. If strings are read-only, the virtual machine and the garbage collector acts and are optimized for that way of doing with strings. So we gain a lot of performance maintaining the idea that strings are read-only. And as usual, we use comma to generate different strings and such things. But the underlying VM is doing optimizations if we work that way. On undefined object, you will see that nil is not the only object that responds true to its nil message. In JavaScript, they have undefined object, undefined, they have null, and we add the object nil. All that object responds true to its nil for us. And it is really convenient when you work with S8. It's something that we, we do not want to accept as Smalltalkers that more than one object responds true to its nil. But it is real convenient to have that convenient message that this nil can respond to for different kinds of undefined beans that is used in JavaScript. Another difference you will see with Smalltalk is that array are variable sized. So you will not find ordered collection. We use arrays, and arrays have all the protocol of ordered collections. So you can at first, remove last. That messages are implemented by arrays, and the collection hierarchy is minimal to have it running in the minimal image.
Question?
Yes, yeah.
Do you also support the select, detect, reject, etc.?
Yes, exactly. All protocol for collection. I will make a distinction in normal dictionaries from dictionaries that you want, or you know that the keys are strings or numbers, for example. You have a custom class for that, and it is much faster. But all the messages that we use in Smalltalk are implemented. S8 is a Smalltalk, and there is no surprise at Smalltalk level. And in the implementation, probably you will be surprised that it is too much simple in some circumstances, in the circumstances that JavaScript provides most of what we need. That in another Smalltalk are primitives or something like that, you will find a JavaScript instruction there. And it is our primitive. Okay?
Are symbols implemented as read-only strings?
Strings are read-only. All the strings are read-only.
Oh.
But symbols are not unique. So
Okay.
new are new as symbols. We support the symbol signature in all the code, but are strings really. And of course they are equal at string level, but cannot be the same at object level. Okay, and that not impose something that make it difficult to understand from the when you develop systems, but it is a different with Smalltalk. Okay. We have an extension to association. In JavaScript, it is frequently used that you create a new object and put properties to that object. And they specify a literal with key values in that object and pass that object as properties to another framework. So it is something that is frequently used in JavaScript world. What we can write that in Smalltalk in a convenient way? Well, we start from an association. Key that it is a symbol, and value, an object. And then use the comma. Another, and internally we have a composite of association, and it is a Smalltalk object. And at the end, we send the message JSON to that object, and you have the literal at JavaScript level. So we have a convenient syntax at Smalltalk level to express the same of JavaScript and share easily properties with frameworks that are already written for JavaScript, and do not have to write something different with a different or a not convenient way to sending messages that are hard to write.
So every object in the system can be turned into a JSON
Yes.
representation?
Yes, and also you can generate JavaScript hash objects. It means it is not a Smalltalk object with a class, but it is a JavaScript object where you put there what you want. And that are composite associations for us. And we use the comma and the association notation to write it easily and read it easily in the code.
Okay. 5 minutes left.
Sorry?
Yeah. 5 minutes left.
Yeah. the kernel of S8 do not need a val function. A val function is defined as an level in JavaScript world because you can evaluate anything at that level from a string. And we are generating JavaScript that do not needs a val. But the environment itself and our compiler generates functions, so needs a val. Okay? But it is needed by the tools. You will find in the compiler not the fastest compiler, but a fast of a compiler that generates events and are customizable. Sorry, I can't give too much details now, but it is really something that can be customized easily to generate different compilers. The compiler is bound to a class, so any class can define the compiler or customize the compiler for their methods. Okay? The image has an image functionality and snapshot functionality. The snapshot is different from the image because it includes all that the system, not all that the system needs to boot. And the image, it is only a set of classes and methods. So the boot is outside the image. It is a convenience. We are using snapshots, for example, to generate Node.js servers. We can generate the image from console devices and inject the server image to a running server. We have a framework to interact to JavaScript frameworks, and it is defined as white box classes to be classified and share all the code generation that it is needed to write easily wrappers to libraries. I will pass. Well, we have different ways to bind to JavaScript and reduce the impact on what we are doing. We can write inline code directly, or the compiler have shortcuts to generate code to do the binding when it is needed. Something that I have not shown you yet is how can it feel, how can it be S8 running in a web browser. So, sorry for that, but yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I wanted to make sure I give time to ask this question, and that is and forgive my ignorance about JavaScript and everything, what is the conceptual difference between S8 and Amber in terms of what they do?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what people are doing with Amber. I can tell you what we are doing with S8. With S8 we have the idea to use S8 as a Smalltalk everywhere, and I have not shown you where we are running. So you will see a difference when you see where we are running. Okay. You can think, okay, you can do that with Amber, but I can talk about what I have done, and I can show you that you can do the same, downloading what we have done, and we share that. Something important for us is that we respect the point of view of the others, and we do not need to converge. We do not feel compromised to converge to others' points of view, and we respect that. I want to be respected. So we will give you references to other people that think different and are using Smalltalk for their work. And we want to maintain the diversity and not the convergence to an ideal. Okay?
Sure, I was just trying to ask for my understanding.
Yeah.
Is all.
Great. Thank you. Well, how it looks a browser, like a normal browser, and how can you interact with the system and do different things well. Browsing as usual, and you can see that it is nothing that can surprise at this level, but when you see that you can select more than one class, it is something that say, why do you want to select more than one class, or say, see, one method,
The other talk is probably.
instance class, for example, here. Well, I'm seeing two methods at the same time. Well, you are using chunk notation because we browse by comparison. We want to see more than one method at once and select different classes at different parts of the hierarchy and edit using chunk format that it is readable for small talkers, but it is convenient to analyze what we are doing in the same at the same time and save all at once and do that kind of operations. Our browser is a comparative browser, so supports browsing of the message you select in different classes, considering the superclasses and all the subclasses. That kind of operations are used in the browser. It is something different, but not too much. At Smalltalk level, we do not want to show something magical or too much different. It is something that we used to share, and we want to see the difference, a personal difference in the users of the system. At the senders or implementers, you can see the same idea. In the implementers, all the implementers can be seen at once, or each one, and the same for the senders. Something to mention here: the references system is part of the core and is implemented completely in S8. So all the tools are implemented in S8. All the windows here running in the browser is implemented in S8, and all the DOM implementation is done in S8 as wrappers, and are complete implementations. The platforms where we are running, or different ways to run S8. Of course, in console mode, we are running 32 and 64 bits on Windows, Linux, and most it is a command line that you can work and explore all the objects. We have a boot function to load and load an image, and from there, if the image exists, for example, we at this point the image is loaded and running, or we can have a convenient message to generate a new image, save the image, or emit from Smalltalk code the binary code. For us, it means a JavaScript code from the Smalltalk. And we do that I can do that at console level.
Leandro, there is another talk on the other side.
Yeah.
I think you have to stop because
Yeah.
this is correct.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much.
Okay. Sorry.
Quite nice, yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Sorry for that.
There's no one in this room, is there?
Yeah,
What
I need to check if they got there.
very interesting.